2个月眼泪就下来了，这受不了。死了50呀，2年半。
他有钱，拿钱压倒一切，把事情全部摆平了。
欢迎到下一代的资深后代，果然精彩的。
那你这个无形中就是控诉了。说白了一点，就是不愿意谈判。我们要站起来和他们斗争。老百姓提出强烈的抗议，如不搬迁，我们老百姓绝不答应。
After the film was actually shown, it was shown on the internet at the Yale Environmental website. And so, and then after the film luckily got nominated. And so the government, the local government was very concerned about the press being there.
They were very worried that we were going to win an Oscar. that we were nominated, that was bad enough, but what were they going to say if we won?
Yeah.
So just in those 2-week period, after the nomination and before the Academy Awards, they didn't have to worry, by the way, we didn't win, but they didn't know that, so.
So there was a big announcement in the Chinese press, someone actually forwarded to us, and they said they're going to spend $30 million US actually to clean up the place, the river, and also they did clean it up, actually it's very nice now, and also they also clean up the factory.
How did you hear about the situation in the village, and at what point did it compel you to make a documentary about it?
After the Oscar in 2007, I was being approached by an NGO and say there's something happening in this area. And also we're doing a lot of public health issues in China, and after the HIV/AIDS project, we want to move into environmental issues. And also that was a great time from 2007 and up to 2009. It was a great time, great opportunity for filmmakers, journalists to go into China because of the Olympic.
So having the struggle between, suggesting them to take some actions and also not maintaining the documentary style and not actually interfering, there's a struggle because that eventually nobody's going to take action. So how much influence or control do you think you guys sort of imposed in leading the story to where it was? Or was it just them doing everything by their own will and you guys not having any control or influence over what they did?
It's a very good question.
I was just going to say, it's a great question.
Actually, the film took, even though it's only 49 minutes, it took 3 years because in a campaign
4.
like that, 4, okay. It just we'll just have to wait and wait it out. And so we started in 2007, and the film was finished in 2010, or 2011. So it just have to we just wait it out. We have no interference, but of course, like Tom said earlier, the cameras were there, and so it motivated the farmer, the villagers to take action. So we were there for a long time, and so they was really take us seriously, and that they think we were going to help them, but in fact, we didn't help them.
Well, except that the company knew that there was a camera around, and the rumor went around that it was a CCTV person. And so that rumor, which, believe you, the villagers did nothing to dispel, because they were very happy to have that rumor around, and so that provided some protection. And it actually ties in with the earlier discussion we were having about the lecture, the idea of cinema verite, of just being a fly on the wall, and it's impossible, because the presence of a camera played a role in restraining the behavior of the companies, because they felt like, they didn't restrain themselves entirely, but they were a little bit held back by the camera, so the camera was helpful. That was not our intention, but it happened.
Hi, I have a question, first of all, about one detail in the film. Like, in the beginning, there was an old lady,
Yeah.
and she said, she was murmuring, and she said, don't film this, and don't show this, but of course it was filmed and it was shown here publicly.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, did you have any communication afterwards, where
Yeah.
is it, and
Yeah,
is it a
yeah.
breach of, against her will?
No, actually, she at first didn't want to be filmed, but then later on, she's like one of the most voice and advocates of the film, and she took us to the polluted place, and later on she keep talking, and we can't stop her talking.
So I was wondering, do you guys follow up the questions in this village after you finish the documentary? It has been 5 years since you finished it. Do you still pay attention to problems afterwards, which is related to the problems in the documentary?
Can I answer that a little bit? Which is, documentary filmmakers work really hard, and documentary filmmakers get very involved in a situation and try to put that and dramatize that situation, and then their work is done, and then before you know it, they're working incredibly hard on the next thing, and so over time, in some cases, those contacts remain, and friendships remain, and communication remains, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's a complicated thing, because you jump into a situation and suddenly you're incredibly intimate with a person or a situation or whatever, and you're really, really deeply involved. But you're also a professional. It's almost like a doctor who cuts somebody open and pulls out one thing and puts back another thing, and they're just involved in life and death, and then they sew them up, and then they go on. They move on to the next thing. And I've come over time to be reconciled to the idea that certainly we followed with great excitement, huge excitement, the fact that this cleanup was taking place. And I followed it for maybe 2 years or 3 years through Ruby, and then I didn't, I was busy. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not defending that. I'm just saying it's a fact of life that you can't possibly sustain the intensity of the relationship that you had.
Well, in the case of the Blood of Yingzhou District, 2 years or 3 years ago, I went back and did a follow-up on the children. So I put it on the web, and so I know a lot of people would like to know the situation of the children. So it's available. Seldom you have that kind of relationship with a subject for such a long time. But in that case, because there were a lot of people were so saw the film and really, really concerned about the children. So I also I felt really responsible for going back and really tell the situation of the children 10 years later.
Thank you for producing this impactful documentary. I'm just interested, whether this documentary is shown in other parts of China. and whether it will be censored?
Well, it was available for, I think, 3-4 months online, and nobody, shut off the link. And then, this last 2 years has been very difficult. And I don't think people can find this film in China anymore. Whereas the Blood of Yingzhou District, you can still find the link and a private copy online. And split up in section, not entire film, but it was split up in 5 or 6 sections. I think it's getting harder and harder in China the last couple of years about this subject, because it's citizen participation about protest. It's a very sensitive subject now.
Well, so yeah, I wanted to ask, in your view, for example, how does that differ from? It would have been different if it would have been a voice narrating the story. What effect did that have?
Yeah, it's another really, really good question. And we were accumulating all of this footage, and we knew that it was a complicated story and that it played out over time, and that we would not be able to do it entirely verite, that we would need something. So we toyed with the idea of, could it be Ruby in the first person, sort of recollecting how she found this situation? Could it be that? We decided against that, and the cards, it's dramatically very different. The cards kind of frame you and give you a context in which to understand the situation, but in a very neutral, anonymous way. So they're just they allow you to orient yourself as to what is going on. Whereas if we had done, say, a first-person piece in which Ruby said, I first got a call in December of 2006, and it was somebody asking me, then Ruby would have become more of a character in the film, and then, you would have had to you would either feel connected or not to that. We ultimately decided that cards and a more neutral approach, but I think the difference is one is more personal and one is more neutral. That would be the short answer. Yeah.
Actually, a lot of people put cards in a way. It's kind of smartly replacing the narration as well, right?
That's sort of a pretty standard thing now, is that you put in a few cards, and that becomes a substitute for a narrative voice. It's a substitute for the classic narrative voice, but it's not a substitute for the other kinds of voices we were talking about.
What I'm interested in is how far would you go in rearranging or editing the dialogues of your interviewees or the subjects that you shoot? Would you allow yourself to rearrange them in terms of time sequence? I mean, chronologically and stuff like that. How would you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, and the temptations are always there, and sometimes you feel that they're justified, and sometimes they're not. But you have chosen to work in non-fiction, which is different from fiction, and you do not have a full freedom, I believe. And the problem then is getting to define exactly where those lines are. And there is really nothing to guide you. I mean, when I started out in a network, a kind of conventional network many years ago, there were rules. There was this big, thick black book, and you leaf through it. Oh, I'm not allowed to do this, and I am allowed to do that, and everybody told you, and they were unbelievably restrictive, and it made filmmaking. The danger was that you were going to be very boring a lot of the time, because you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, you couldn't do this, and but in independent documentary, there are no such rules, and in fact, if you followed that big, thick black book, nobody would ever see your film, ever, because you couldn't even get the person, you missed them walking out the door, you can't even say, oh, excuse me, could you walk out the door again? You can't do anything like that. And so it's really impossible to make a good film that way. And so I come back to this simple rule. Am I embarrassed by what I'm doing? Am I? And I've always wanted and dreamt of a website where it's like not a confession website, but it's just a public website where you said, This person refused to give me an interview unless I paid for their bus to come to and from the place. So I gave them $30 US or else I wasn't going to get the interview. And you post that. And this time, this thing was said here and this thing was said here, but actually I put them together and made it sound like they were sounding there. And then you just list all that stuff. And then that way the viewer can decide whether they still trust you or not. Because that's really what it's about. Have you done something that violates the trust in the subject or violates the trust with the viewer? And if you're willing to absolutely lay out every trick that you used in the making of that film, then the viewer at least is protected. The viewer can decide then, do they buy the story or not? I think transparency is the only answer. Unfortunately, there is no such website.
Well, Tom holds a very high standard of credibility, but nowadays I think people watch so much reality TV and there's like manufactured truth. Yeah. How do you distinguish that?
And the viewer doesn't really, the viewer has now become so knowledgeable about how a film is made that they would be astonished if you didn't do those things, you know? Because they're probably making a documentary film themselves, you know, because everybody is making a documentary film. So, you know, people know the craft, and the viewer's relationship to that craft is very different than it was 30 or 40 years ago. And the expectations are different. And the flip side of that is the drama expectations are also different. They want a really satisfying dramatic experience. And so you know, it pushes you. It pushes you in the sense of, okay, God, I didn't get that. I missed that. How can I know what? I'm gonna ask this guy, he's not actually doing this anymore. I'm gonna ask him if he wouldn't mind to come back and do this thing one more time so that I can film it and I'm gonna put it in as if I got it the first time. It's cheating. It's, quote, cheating. But have you violated the core story? And that's the question. So make it public and let people decide.
Well, with that, any more questions?
You know, I'm sorry, one last thing. Errol Morris, we were talking before about cinema verite, and Errol Morris, who's a great documentary filmmaker who did The Fog of War and other really great films, he said, yes, well, they say that Jean-Luc Godard said that film is truth 24 times a second. And he was close, but he just got one little thing wrong. It's actually lies 24 times a second. So,
well, that's...
I'm not saying that's but in other words, the thing of like drama, truthfulness, creating drama, and you know, and how you reconcile all those things is a big question. And it's also affected the subjects, because the subjects are very media literate. So that, you know, you'll be filming somebody and they'll say, oh, did you get what you need there? Do you want me to do any part of that again? Or, you know, in other words, because they're in on the process, and that's what you see in reality TV, where the subject is really producing the drama. Some of it under instruction from the producer, and some of it because they just understand the drill. You know, let me have a big fight here because the camera is here and that'll get me screen time, you know.
Well, with that...
Yeah, that's a dark note to end on. I don't want to end on that. We still care a lot about telling a story true. I just want to make that clear. It's complicated.
Yes, so with this complicated world and complex reality, so should we give Tom a big hand? Thank you.